Regulation G is upon us, and this brings back the legendary Pokemon, but some of these Pokemon got a pretty massive buff in Scarlet and Violet, and we're going to talk about it. Allow me to explain. So the big buff in Regulation G that a lot of Pokemon got as far as legendaries go is not terrestrialization, it's not access to a new move, it's actually an item, and the item in question here is actually going to be the Clear Amulet. This thing is massive for a lot of these Pokemon and is really going to force a lot of Pokemon to adapt, specifically looking at Incineroar. If we look back at Sword and Shield's final format, Incineroar had a 73% usage rate. That is absolutely crazy, very, very high, and it makes sense because Incineroar was so dominant, it was able to help deal with Zacian more effectively, and just worked as that Pokemon to deal with a lot of those strong physical attackers. Groudon was also very popular, helps with the Groudon matchup, very good Pokemon. However, this changes with the access to the Clear Amulet because it blocks that Intimidate as well as Parting Shot. So this majority of the time is going to affect those physical attackers in the format. Groudon benefits from it, although I do think there are better items for Groudon, like a Citrus Berry or a Lefties. Does help Groudon significantly in this format. A lot of other Pokemon are actually going to benefit from it. First and foremost, I want to talk about a non-physical attacker. We're going to talk about Shadow Rider Calyrex. Now, this item is actually incredibly solid on Shadow Rider, specifically because one of the biggest things to help deal with Shadow Rider Calyrex is actually going to be Snarl Spam. Snarl Spam is incredibly good into this Pokemon, especially because Snarl is a dark type move. Most of the Pokemon running it are dark type Pokemon, allowing you to just kind of ignore what this Pokemon likes to run, that being Expanding Force as well as Astral Barrage. You take both of those hits incredibly well with a dark type Pokemon, and you don't have to worry about taking a ton of damage from this, which normally nukes stuff, and you could just sit there and spam Snarl. However, with a Clear Amulet on Calyrex-Shadow Rider, you completely ignore the fact that Snarl exists, so you're almost forced to run knockoff on any given Pokemon in order to remove this item, and half the time you're not going to be able to do that because this is running next to Indeedee with Follow Me. So even if you wanted to go for Snarl Spam, you're going to be stuck knocking off Indeedee until this thing goes down, and this thing could do a ton of damage. So it's very, very tricky for Pokemon to deal with Calyrex-Shadow Rider if it is running the Clear Amulet. And I think this is one of the few examples of a Pokemon with a special attack that benefits from this particular item in this format, but definitely a really powerful combination here because, like I said, the best way to deal with Calyrex-Shadow Rider is to sit there and spam Snarl in front of it. But going down the list of the different restricted Pokemon that can benefit from this, looking at things like Rayquaza. Rayquaza is going to be very popular right now. Not necessarily a fantastic pick, but it's going to be very popular. If we throw a Clear Amulet on this Pokemon is going to be like a Dragonite option where it can run E-Speed. You could do Terra Normal E-Speed on this Pokemon, run it next to the Chien-Pao, right? And then do basically what you did with Dragonite, but with this Pokemon. And, you know, Dragonite, it was immune to Intimidate. This Pokemon's not, so what you can do is run Clear Amulet and run Swords Dance on this. And then you could set up Swords Dance and then start going for E-Speeds with Terra Normal. And that's going to do a crazy amount of damage, right? And you just completely ignore the Incineroar matchup until they knock off. And it's just very, very powerful. Another Pokemon that benefits dramatically from this is going to be the Koraidon. Koraidon is really, really solid. I don't think it's as good as Groudon, and we can have a whole separate video talking about that. But honestly, Groudon I think is better, mainly because of the fact that, you know, Groudon doesn't take up that dragon role. So running this with other dragon type Pokemon, whether it be Raging Bolt, whether it be Walking Wake, those Pokemon pair very nicely, and you're not matching up those tight weaknesses with the Pokemon setting the sun. I think this Pokemon's good, but it also feels like a Terra Sync because of its typing. It is very, very vulnerable to any sort of Pokemon with a fairy type attack. So for that reason alone, I don't think it's as good as Groudon, but it is really nice with Clear Amulet. You can avoid the Incineroar matchup, and you're able to hit it with a Collision Course very effectively. And if you were running like a bulk up set as well, this gives you the opportunity to avoid parting shots and stuff on the bulk up and just continue to stack those buffs and be able to just do massive damage with Koraidon. So I think Koraidon's another fantastic example of Clear Amulet being just so incredibly solid for this format. Zekrom's another one I feel can benefit from this. I don't think Zekrom is going to be very good at all. It's just kind of a mediocre Pokemon, but being able to avoid that Intimidate and be able to actually start setting up with this particular Pokemon and just start doing damage is really nice. For a Pokemon that's mid, being able to avoid something that makes it even more mid is just incredibly powerful. You can go for your fusion bolts and start doing big damage into opposing Pokemon, and I think it's really cool for this reason. Being able to actually play Zekrom to some capability, I think this might be one of the better items for this particular Pokemon, just because, like I said, it is relatively mid. And it's just, I don't think, as far as electric types go in the current format, that this Pokemon really holds a candle to anything else. Like, Koraidon is so incredibly good. We also still have Raging Bolt. I think these Pokemon are just going to be the bread and butter as far as electric types go in this format. Zekrom is going to see very little play, if any at all. Now, I think one of the best Pokemon that's going to benefit from this is going to actually be Calyrex-Ice Rider. I think this is incredibly solid on Ice Rider. Ice Rider was already very powerful Pokemon with that 165 base attack stat. That's absolutely massive for this Pokemon. And what makes this even better is that you can start getting your Trick Room set up and start taking Pokemon to activate your Chilling Neigh and just start stacking up all of those different attack buffs before this is actually able to be removed from this Pokemon, and it's going to be incredibly solid for that reason. It's just a very powerful Pokemon. Like I said, with these defensive stats, you could pretty much go 252, maybe drop a little bit more into like special defense, but this Pokemon just hits like an absolute truck, and being able to take those hits because of this massive defensive bonus that this Pokemon has naturally, it's just incredibly solid to start getting rolling. Taking KOs very easily, especially if you're running this next to a Farigiraf, so you can't be like Sucker Punched, or running this with Indeedee and Psychic Terrain. Both these Pokemon have access to Helping Hand, which is incredibly solid for this Pokemon, and you're able to just start hitting things with your Glacial Lance very easily and taking massive damage into the opposing team and taking KOs to get that Grim Neigh up, or Chilling Neigh, excuse me, for this particular Pokemon. Very powerful. I think this is one of the best Pokemon currently in the restricted. I have a tier list of all of the Pokemon ranked, the legendaries for this format. Definitely check that video out as well, but I definitely think that as far as competitive Pokemon go, as in the restricted tier, Calyrex, both Ice and Shadow Rider, are going to dominate this format. They are very good Pokemon. And I think this really changes Incineroar specifically. I still think Incineroar is incredibly good. Don't get this twisted. I don't think Incineroar is bad by any means. But this particular item being in play really forces your Incineroar to run knockoff. You're very much forced. If you want Incineroar to do Incineroar things, you need to be able to remove that Clear Amulet item. And it's very important, because with Intimidate, the whole idea behind Incineroar is you're able to go in and you're able to Intimidate and then Parting Shot and keep cycling that in order to keep these big restricted Pokemon in check. And this was very prominent, like I said, in the Pikalytics, with that high usage rate, that 73% usage rate in Sword and Shield. Incineroar was filling that role very well. But with this Clear Amulet, it becomes incredibly difficult for Incineroar to do that. So knockoff is going to be all that much more common. I know a lot of them were running things like Throat Chop, or even opting for Snarl instead on Incineroar. And we may still see Snarl pop up here and there on Incineroar, because I think it's good into that Shadow Rider Calyrex matchup. But with the Clear Amulet being so prevalent, and I think with a lot of these Pokemon being as good as they are, I definitely think that knockoff is necessary for this Pokemon to be as good as it was in Sword and Shield's metagame. So I definitely think Incineroar is going to see some adaptations. You're going to see less Throat Chop. You're going to see a lot more knockoff, and other Pokemon are going to start running knockoff as well. Tyranitar, that's a very popular move on that. If Tyranitar makes some waves here in this particular format, I would love to see that. I don't think it's going to be that great, but I would love to see Tyranitar make some moves. Roaring Moon is another one with knockoff that is very popular. You may even see, I believe Rillaboom still has access to knockoff, if I'm not mistaken. It does. So Rillaboom may start running knockoff a bit more in these particular matchups. You have Incineroar, Rillaboom, and a water type for your Fire, Water, Grass core, and you're going to see that pop up a little bit more. Just a lot more Pokemon are going to end up running that particular item, because it is a pain. And it's not just good for the fact that, you know, it blocks Incineroar, but it also stops, you know, Icy Winds. For Calyrex-Shadow Rider, being able to stop you know, eerie impulses or things of that nature is very nice. So there's a lot of things that the Clear Amulet is benefiting outside of just the stat drop from Intimidate or from Snarl. It's stopping those, you know, other prankster options from like Thundurus, because I think there is a use case for Thundurus in this format. I think Thundurus could actually be really nice as a form of speed control, especially on like Calyrex-Shadow Rider teams. I think it pairs very nicely with that. Being able to slow stuff down or playing into Calyrex-Shadow Rider can be very good as far as, you know, dropping Eerie Impulses or going for Thunder Waves. Being able to just slow Pokemon down is very solid with this. If it's running, what is it, Scary Face? Yeah, lowers the target speed by 2. A lot of things that Thundurus can do is stopped by Clear Amulet. I think that's incredibly solid for a lot of these Pokemon that are benefiting. Icy Wind is going to pick up a lot. I think as far as like Iron Bundle being played, with Miraidon being so popular, you can now run bundle without a booster energy, and you run like Focus Sash on your bundle, so Icy Winds are going to start popping up on those Miraidon teams. I think that is something you can watch out for a lot with your Clear Amulet. It stops those stat drops. Very, very nice in that regard. So there's just a ton of things that this Pokemon, well, in general, that this item is benefiting from. Another popular thing that's running around, and I think is still going to be popular going into Regulation G, is going to be that Gouging Fire. Gouging Fire's bread and butter is looking for Breaking Swipe after it sets up a couple howls, right? It's going to sit next to things like Groudon. It's going to sit next to Koraidon. It's going to get that booster energy proc. You can run a different item on this now. You can run like Assault Vest. You can run Citrus Berry. You can run a bunch of things on this Pokemon. A lot of these are running Clear Amulet themselves. You can run a lot of things on this Pokemon, but if you have Clear Amulet on your physical attacker and you're getting hit by Breaking Swipe, you're not going to be taking any of those stat drops, which is incredibly powerful. So it's for this reason that I think as far as physical attackers go, they all got a pretty significant buff as far as the restricteds go. Pretty significant buff, it just in the form of this item. And even looking at Shadow Rider Calyrex, you know, there are other Pokemon that are going to be able to benefit from this item as well. So I'm keen to see how this item is used. I think it's going to become a lot more popular in a lot of Pokemon in Regulation G. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but that is going to be it for this video. If you're not already, sub for more videos like this in the future, and check out the Discord if you want any of your Reg G team featured on the channel in the future. But until next time, peace.